You're listening to Cottontail's podcast, part of the Silicon Valley Black Project, which produced the documentary film A Place at the Table about the Black pioneers of Silicon Valley. Today we're talking to Brian Reaves, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Dell Computer. To start, who is Brian Reaves? So tell me about your background and your family roots and your personal goals.
Yeah, so from a family root perspective, my mom was born in Sulphur Springs, Texas, and my dad was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. Like many sort of black families during those times when they were born, you eventually migrated to opportunity. And so, her parents migrated to California, sort of started in the north and ended up in the south. And for my dad, the Marines sort of took him around the world and back, and he ended up in Southern California, and that's where they met. I came along in 1963. Very, very interesting times as reflect back to now and to what's happening now. But we were, sort of in South Central LA. Eventually, my parents divorced. There was never a lack of love. I mean, our family was very, very close. Not only, with my mom and my grandparents, but my aunt and uncle, and so we always had love. Didn't have a lot of extra stuff at times, but it didn't matter because when I talked to other folks, they might have had the extra things, but they didn't have the love and attention that we have, and I am very, very thankful for that. And that shows up every day in my life when I think about what's important. Knowing that people care about you, knowing that people believe in you, knowing people are investing in you so that you can have a better life is something that I'm blessed to have. And again, it is what drives me from personally and professionally.
Mm-hmm. So your career kind of goes up and down here. You had a lot of positions of leadership pretty early on.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think, and going back to the first question there, how I was raised, it was very, very clear. If you were a young black man growing up, sort of in South Central LA, there were many, paths, and a lot of those paths weren't very good. And the vast majority of people from the neighborhoods that I grew up in, quite honestly, the top three jobs were a drug dealer or a pimp or a gang member. But again, due to the love of my family and the folks, and quite honestly, some of my family members would have probably taken me off the earth before the streets did.
Right.
You learn that you need to have hope, you need to have dreams to get to work for those things. Sort of after graduating from college, or even there at UCLA, that's after the freshman year of getting that internship, I might not have been the brightest person that our corporation interviewed that day for that internship, but I was the most focused. I think they knew that this mattered more than anything else, and that what I was going to do would change not only my life, but potentially generations after me, and certainly for those people around me. So I think if people, sort of look at me, they see me as an authentic leader. I don't shy away from the story and the roots that make me who I am. But they also will find someone in that, is empathetic, but also will drive very, very hard, and I'm willing to do anything I'd ask someone else to do. And I think those are some of the attributes I've been told that are valuable in leadership. And when you put yourself out there and are willing to learn and push very hard, people will give you opportunity. That's what I found. It doesn't have to be somebody who looks like me. The vast majority of people early in my career, certainly as a technologist, looked nothing like me, didn't have backgrounds like mine, but what they saw as a hunger and a drive to be successful. And they made investments in me that sort of helped me grow.
There have been people in my life, and I'm sure you just touched on it on yours, who don't look like us, but who take the risk of giving us that first opportunity. Who was the first person in your life to give you that opportunity?
My intern manager at Xerox, and this would have been 1982, at the back end, that summer after. Her name was Janet Hine. She's a white female from a very affluent family. She had come to the UCLA campus to recruit. And during her panel interviews, no one looked like me had come in there hungry. She was very interested in my story. And what she saw in me when I did that interview, that the answers I gave were different. The answers were intriguing to her because for her, she saw potential. She knew in the Xerox environment at that time that that's the type of company she wanted to be around, where you gave opportunity with people, potential. She was relatively young. In fact, at that time, I think she became the youngest vice president in Xerox's history at that time.
Wow.
And so somebody had taken her as a female, even though she was a white female, someone had taken a risk on her. Janet was phenomenal. I didn't know a lot about. She exposed me to a world. She was the first person to put me on an airplane to outside of the United States, which was pretty amazing as well. But she pushed me hard, and she always said, "Hey, you have potential. I'm going to push you. So I'm going to keep giving it to you until you tell me to stop. But don't ever tell me to stop giving you opportunity."
And I'm sure because of the way you were raised and the way I was raised, when they gave me those kind of opportunities, it seemed like a cakewalk because I had so much stuff I had to do to get there that this was the easy part,
Oh, it was. And even in school, that 1 year whereby my mom was able to scrape enough money to take me for seventh grade out of the inner city school, which I would have gone to middle school in seventh grade, and put me in this school in Hollywood. And, very affluent Hollywood Hills, studied the director of something or movie, this or that. And it was very interesting to me because in the classroom, those things, because I had always pushed myself so hard, and, when these topics would come up, whether it's math or English or sort of science, those things, I was all over because I studied hard and I wanted to do really well. And I saw, even though many of these other kids had everything, they were struggling because they didn't have that discipline. And quite honestly, they probably thought they had a plan B. They didn't know it, but mom or dad, they probably knew that success was going to happen some sort of way. Mm-hmm. For me, there was not a plan B. There's only plan A. Get out of school on time, because your scholarship money only went 4 years, so not 4 in a day.
Yeah.
And so that's the mindset is you hungry for something, and you work hard for it. You really, really want it. That will show up.
Right.
Whereas people get lackadaisical, and any bad thing happens, they think it's the end of the world. Bad thing happens to me, it's really not a bad thing. I've seen a lot worse.
Yeah, the bad thing's kind of like life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. That's a bad thing. Now move on.
Yeah, what's next?
I know you're at in the pinnacle of technology right now. You see it burgeoning and growing. But here in Silicon Valley, I'm wondering how long we're going to be able to hold on to that title of the center of technology. What do you think is going to be happening?
Yeah, what's happened, over these years is pretty amazing. I started my career in the mainframe era, and you see, when I and another one of my business partners started our first technology company in 1993, Beyond Software. The world was really different. We did it in Silicon Valley. Everything seemed to be very, very centered there. Now, you sort of fast forward to now, and what you see is, we really are in the midst of this fourth industrial revolution where every company is a technology company. Every company, regardless of what industry you're in, are looking to leverage innovation to move forward. And every company, quite honestly, is either serving, or the vast majority are serving a global customer base, and or themselves are putting the employees and sort of their R&D centers around the world. So what I see, and it's not a bad thing, even though Silicon Valley created a lot of the things started there, I love the fact that all of this opportunity is permeating around the world. So it's not just North America, it's not Europe, the Middle East, and Africa only. It's not just Latin America. It's not Asia Pacific and Japan and Greater China. It's everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's a bad thing because it's going to open up opportunity for more people as well. One of the challenges is when you have the things that are happening in only one place, everyone has to make their way there. And then you start thinking about the socioeconomic difference. There are a lot of people who barely leave their village, let alone figure out how to get to a particular place so they can have a meaningful career. So as, all the technology, the disintermediation of it is around, I think it's a great thing. And that's not to say that Silicon Valley still won't thrive, But as the world thrives, I think more boats will be lifted.
You are in the business of diversity, okay?
Yeah.
Uh, Back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, and even into the 80s, possibly the 90s, the most important thing was to get the numbers. So we get the numbers, we turn in the EOC report, and everything looked cool because if it matched the population, the whole number game.
Yeah.
But what we didn't see was the promotion, the internal numbers changing. You still didn't see that upward movement uh, that prevalent in every company we work for. So, and my guess was is that number had to be firm. They had to make sure they had government contract that meant that they had to meet those numbers, but they were not thinking about the individuals in the number.
Yeah.
My guess is I'm wondering if diversity, the word now, means something completely different than it did then.
It has definitely evolved. So, affirmative action, as you said, is really rooted and still when people talk about EEOC, it's a compliance type of conversation, a legal conversation. The minimal obligation one might have for reporting if you're over a certain size company. Diversity and inclusion, and certainly, leading to equity, is a different conversation. What we talk about there is really a business imperative to the degree that a lot of companies are worried that they don't have enough skilled talent to be able to move their business objectives forward. And that's scary. So when we think about diversity and inclusion, in a world where you have 7.7 billion people or 300 million people even in the U.S., there is definitely enough talent around the world. They have the will. We just need to empower them with the skills. So this whole business imperative is tied to it. So it's not a let me hire the minimum. It's like I need to go out and get the best talent because talent is going to help me win. Then you get these great studies, and that probably didn't happen back then. Smart companies like McKinsey who start to measure what's the impact of the inclusivity in a company. And they put out statistics like if a company embraces ethnic and cultural empowerment, they have a 33% greater chance to outperform their peers. If gender, sort of empowerment that you embrace is 21%. If you do neither, you have a 29% chance to be behind your peers. So once people start understanding that, this is dollars and cents, greater innovation, greater employee retention, greater employee engagement, and those derive benefits to both the top and bottom lines, it's a total different conversation now. The opportunity still is to get beyond those biases that exist when people are making both acquisition of talent decisions as well as upward mobility decisions. Because you'll have, in my opinion, three pockets of people. You'll have the people who see it as a zero-sum game. They're afraid. If I give to you, you've taken from me. But those folks do exist. On the other side of it, you have folks who sort of are very aware of what I just said. But the opportunity is what I call the frozen middle. Those individuals who make decisions every day, but they're not quite sure why they might make it. And then you fall into this, well, I've done enough. Well, no, you can never do enough. You put it in the dollars and cents. There's no one I know, at least that should be working, who wouldn't want to work for a company that has greater potential, that is higher revenues, because that's personal and that helps them thrive as well. So the game has definitely changed. And to your point, sort of grown up, my degrees are in math and computer science. I view this, and when I got into this area, I viewed it as a business imperative. How do you bring an engineering mindset to probably the most complex business problems? I've solved other complex business problems with software, but how do you sort of bring that same mindset to, how to empower people so that they are uplifted, which makes sense for companies to be uplifted. So that's how I think about it. Is I still think of myself as an engineer. I just am focused on a different business problem.
Now, you've worked on several different platforms. You've worked as a CEO, you've worked as an individual contributor, and now here you are almost at a CEO level again. What did you gain from those different platforms, and which one do you enjoy the most?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because they come with different, sort of responsibilities. As a CEO, what was great there is you have not only a seat at the table, but you have the top seat at the table, and so you can actually lot of the work of the CEO is really always, dealing with your investors, it's dealing with a lot of things that, quite honestly, many times take you away from what I find fun is getting my hands dirty.
Yeah.
But there's some value in that. You get to set the strategy, you get to set the mission, you get to build a team around you, and it really is you get to build a culture. Whereas when you're not in that role, you will join someone else's sort of mission. But if you've earned the right, you'll join the right type of company where that mission is in alignment with yours. As an individual contributor on the other end, that's fun because you get to master things. You literally, you don't have to worry about all of the things of the world problems that you can really go in and master. And that, for parts of the career, is really good because you can constantly and hopefully can be a continuous learner. Somewhere in between the two, I really enjoy. So the positions I've had, and including this one, where not only do I get to, Michael Dell has allowed me the ability to set strategy for how diversity and inclusion will help write the next great chapter of this company, but I also get to be hands-on. I'm learning the field myself, and I get to spend a lot of time with my team members that I have the privilege of managing, and we're learning stuff together. So I kind of like, all the roles have been interesting, but I kind of like a combination of being able to really influence and see business impact, but at the same time continue to be a learner, and learn to continue to take those things to drive the impact. So you're sort of going.
Yeah. I know when I left a small startup and went to a large company, I was thrilled by it at first, and then about 6 months into it, I realized they had me focused on one task. It was huge because of the size of the company, but it was still very, very mundane. And when I had been at the startup, I did everything, and it made my job much more interesting. I never knew from one day to the next what I was going to be doing, and I found out that was really who I was. I'm not a manager. I'm not that CEO type. I'm not the one that's going to be at the top doing that one thing. You give me a multitude of problems, I'm in my world.
And I think the best leaders, quite honestly, I have that mindset. I mean, being continuous learners, having empathy, unblocking, having enough power to be able to unblock so that, your employees can make progress, but at the same time, sort of being on the journey.
Yeah.
And we're in an interesting place. You asked earlier around this whole, where's technology innovation going around the world? We're at a very interesting point where technology is moving so fast that where people, if you've been doing 20 years of something, you got to learn to do something else now. So this whole how to reskill the workforce. And I know a lot of people are scared because there used to be, hey, once I've reached the top of the heap, I'm the master of it, I get to own it. Well, that thing has moved on. So you have to move as well. So there's a lot of things going on, and the best companies are really investing not only in the acquisition of talent, but reinvesting in the people who have built that company and giving them different paths to have second and third careers within a company. And those will be the companies I think that will thrive the best over time.
One of the questions I used to ask when I was recruiting, first I'd ask them, what kind of expectations did they have of the company that they were coming into, and then I would ask them, what are they willing to do to stay in the company? Were they willing to work a 60-hour week? Were they willing, so I had a little series of questions. And it's interesting how people will say, well, I can't work 60 hours. And you want to say, well, then maybe you're not the guy.
Yeah. There are no number of hours I'm not willing to do if I'm learning and engaged and I see that I'm making progress and I see that I have impact. And that's the deal, is at what point in your career do you go from it being a job to really this is something where you have mastery, you have passion, and and you have this drive to keep going because we like to tinker. That's why I'm so amazed when I watch movies. When I was a child, I could play forever, and I'm sure it's kind of like, well, don't they ever get tired? It's because you're enjoying it, and we can do things for extraordinary periods of time. The things we don't like to do very much, we'll put limits on that, and so. That's the key, I think, for it's fine. You have to earn the right. So their job, yes, when you start, you must earn the right to be able to start to call the shots in your career. But as people begin to move, I always mentor individuals and say, hey, start, earn the right, master it, but then start asking for things and move yourself towards something where your passion as well as your expertise sort of intersect. And when you get there, there's no limit.
Now, you're to young people, your story is very compelling, I'm sure. I mean, they look at you and think, wow, how did he, wow, he's there, he's the guy. So, but if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say?
It's interesting. I would have even taken, if I had the opportunity, even more risk earlier. I spent the first 9 years of my career at Xerox, and it became comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But I had some conversations with folks coming from Uncle Silicon Valley. If something was going on there, and there was still something in me that said I could either be at Xerox for 20, 30 years, that's one job, and no disrespect for those who do that. Or I can go to a place where, it seems to be an environment where you can be creative and take risks. And so that would be the ones I even earlier, by that time, maybe the last 2 years of Xerox, I probably would have come earlier. I flippantly say, I wish I would have made some investments in companies. Invested early, Apple, as one of them as an example.
Don't we all?
Microsoft, you put the money there. But just even, I would tell my younger self, don't be afraid to fail. Because at some point you have earned the right, and failure is not a bad thing always in business. You have people who trust you and people who invested in you. Take risks. Don't take the safe route all the time. And that's the way I think about it now. And even people ask the question, why did you leave this career as a successful engineer and do the diversity inclusion thing? It's like, I didn't leave anything. I'm bringing all that learning into, solving.
That's good. I like that. I'm bringing it all.
I'm bringing it all with me. All those experiences matter. So that would definitely be one. I would also, when you're working so hard, and this is that balance. Once you do, I did get to the valley, it was crazy. I mean, and all, but I would tell people, hey, do take time for yourself sometimes. Mm-hmm. That it'll be there waiting for you tomorrow, even though it'll feel like that the immediacy and valley, things are moving so quickly, it's crazy. Movie stories talk about it. Right. But I would just say, did I really have to, sort of, miss that vacation? Did I not, get enough visits with the people, with loved ones, because in spirit, the business is so dominant. And it's have to have, if I knew that there could be a little bit more balance, still, would have been pretty crazy. But I would tell folks as well as enjoy it, because you never know what your last day will be on this earth. And you sort of kind of take it for granted that you're going to be around for a while. And I think a lot of people have that if I would have, should have, which I don't never want to have. But I would take a little bit more time to have some fun during those periods of time in the early years.
Yeah, pretty hard though when you're in the midst of it. It looks
because it feels like it's like and again, going back to that CEO question, what you do definitely matters because what you do impacts everybody else. So you feel the burden of doing whatever is necessary to keep everyone gainfully employed because your lives are in their hands. So, but as a consultant, I like that part. When I went and got into consulting after and helping with turnarounds, that was kind of good. I kind of like that. Set your number of hours, you work hard, and you take that. So I kind of learned that a little bit later.
My problem with consulting was this. I wanted to have something connected to the company, and I'd come in and I'd get sideswiped by information I didn't have when I got in there, and then had to work through the issues, and then lo and behold, you solve the issue for them, and then you leave, and you don't know, it's like,
no, you're right. You always find your job as a consultant to build it and hand it to someone else.
Yeah, it's like,
sometimes through that baby, you want to see how that baby got birthed.
Exactly. Give me a call. Tell me that I did well. Something.
Something. Yes, keep in touch. You kind of, they're kicking you out the door, and you're like,
didn't you like me?
No, it is transactional in nature. Yeah.
Tell me, when you were a younger technologist out there, who were some of the people that influenced you and helped you along your career path?
Yeah, I mean, one that is huge, and I believe you know him, God bless him, Frank Green.
Oh.
He, Frank was like bigger than life. I first time I met Frank was I got introduced to Frank because Frank at that time was running New Vista Capital, and we were looking to investors to put money into Beyond Software. But I remember sitting with Frank, and I was intimidated. I had read a little bit about his background, he was a Stanford guy. He went to HBCU, a Howard guy. He had done these phenomenal things with this TDC company, the Technology Development Corp. Sort of high performance computing. And so when I was sitting with Frank, I was like, I'm in the same room with someone who I believe is legendary in this valley. And he was just so down to earth. And I learned a lot from interacting with Frank. Wow, he asked a lot of questions. And I always appreciated that because he was trying to understand, how you were thinking. And then because of his experience, he knew where this would end up, or this mindset. He would add value and nudge you. Sometimes it's a soft nudge, sometimes it's a direct nudge if you thought you were going to get into it. So I always think of Frank as one of those who was so thoughtful and caring and focused on excellence. So folks like Frank, and then I know another person to know like Roy Clay. I mean, another different one, HP legendary, computer scientist. I know he did significant things, started there early, and did significant things, ran significant product lines. And then he went, I think he got into some form of politics after. So I look at, on both sides of, people like, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's, and to earn the right to be around people like, sort of Frank, and to know, sort of Roy and others, just phenomenal. You look back now and you're like, oh my goodness, that those were moments in time that you didn't know at the time, but you cherish them even more.
You were. With those two guys, to me, they're my two heroes here in Silicon Valley. In fact, I featured them both in my film prominently. So that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No, incredible. It's just some legacy, the legacies that they leave behind. And again, for them to humbly give up their time. I mean, they can be doing a lot. I mean, like many people, successful people can decide where they want to spend their time. And for them to leverage their, their brilliance and to pass it on and to support others that they one day do the same, that they would like pay it forward.
Yes.
Types of things. Again, back then you didn't know it was happening. You kind of knew something was different, but now you look back and those are the type of things that I hope to do as well. It's like, who can I inspire? Who can I coach up? And who can I push harder? Because those moments in time matter. They matter.
Yeah. Is there anyone in particular you're pushing, or is there any company that you're?
Yeah, I mentor a fair bit now. There's a young brother and I hope he's going to read this podcast, so I'm going to embarrass him right now. His name is Julian Vanderhoofs. I met Julian. I was at my previous company at SAP, and we had, in trying to be innovative in how we engage HBCUs, we had come up with a project or an initiative called Project Propel. It wasn't just going to show up on campus and say, hey, who wants a job at SAP? It was like we knew we needed to get into the classroom because we were competing against the Apples and the Facebooks and all of those for talent. And at that time, young people, if we did things in their everyday lives, they thought those companies were the only company. Right. And here we are at SAP, this big German company. But I remember, meeting Julian and a number of other students, and I saw in him what I know in me, which is he might not have been the best student. He was a good student, but he wasn't necessarily the best. But he was going to work hard. He had potential, and he had just that flair about him where people were attracted to him. So I'm like, I'm going to watch that brother. So we ended up bringing him in for an internship. We ended up hiring him at SAP. Quite honestly, he's now at Dell Technologies because I knew I was doing. He's on my team now, and he's just sort of doing amazing things. He's now taking what he's learned, and he's also doing the same thing for the next crop of young folks coming up. So I love Julian to death. I hope he hears that. He's an amazing young man, and his career will go far beyond mine. But those moments in time. I mean, Julian will probably tell you. Someone had to sort of make that investment, and I had the honor to do that. Now he's just he's always back.
Yeah. But then, if you hadn't been there, if you had not been there,
that's the boy. Julian is the man. embarrassed. Sorry, Julian. But she asked, and I had to tell the truth.
Well, I can't edit this out.
Oh, that's embarrassing. Don't edit that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I've run out of questions, and we've run out of time because I don't like them the podcast to last too long. I think my first ones were running almost over an hour, and they were interesting, but Lord Jesus,
No, this was fun. Yeah, no, I'm going to listen to the other ones as well, and I hope that it inspires, the stories inspire sort of people to continue to do great and do what they can to sort of have others stand on their shoulders.
Well, now, what is your title at Dell Computer?
I'm the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. So my remit is globally to really drive the strategies and tactics that will build inclusion in the company, which will help write the next great chapter. So that's why the way I normally tell people is Michael Dell, so technologically the company is amazing, has been since we started the company. But this part is just as important to him. It's not just what we do, but who we are is just as important. And who we are is rooted in our ability to want to be the employer of choice for all. Not just an employer of choice, people say, but for all, where anyone can see a career where they thrive no matter and bring their authentic selves to the company. Mm-hmm. You don't need to be like us. We need to be where you are, and that'll grow the culture.
Well, how many people do they have in their diversity department, or what is considered?
Yeah, what's been pretty amazing. I've got about 30 people in my group, but diversity now we have it across all. We've got about 155,000 people around the world, and since I've been here for the 2.5 years, I mean there are all kinds of people who that we influence and direct the actions of. That's been amazing. From every country around the world, I've got leaders in my group. I've got a leader in Latin America. I've got a leader in APJC. I've got a leader in India. Leaders here in the United States, but they in turn drive and lead a number of activities. We've got over 43,000 people in our employee resource group.
Wow.
13 of them that span whether it's ethnic and Black Networking Alliance, Connection, Women in Action, Pride, True Ability. So I view them as the people who make D&I successful within Dell. We've got 43,000 sort of soldiers out there bringing it every day, and I appreciate every one of them.
Okay, and that alone tells me how different and robust a diversity program must be in a large company like
it
Dell.
is quite amazing, and my core team is amazing. So passionate, most of which, quite honestly, when we bring people into the field, they have very different backgrounds. They don't have traditional HR backgrounds, or they aren't in diversity inclusion. They come as folks in sales, and marketing, engineers, data scientists, because we're thinking of it a different way, because we think that that's the way we'll accelerate and elevate the top. So pretty exciting.
Cool. Well, Brian Reaves, thank you, Brian, for sharing your story. I am sure that others will be inspired to follow your path. And thank you for listening.